I've had many requests over the last year to do a review on the Miracle Piano.
On September 19th, we gave Allison Leong a new piano teaching system.
I don't know how to do that. It's funny.
1 month later, she performed a miracle.
If I goof up at the concert, then I will be really embarrassed.
Well, as coincidence would have it, I was at an estate sale in Flower Mound, Texas, when I came across one being sold for $25. They even found the box for it on the way out. So I did get the manuals and the original floppy disks, which are 720K to give you an idea of how old this is. On the side of the box, the system requirements show it would work on even the oldest of PCs. Alternatively, you can see it would run on everything from a Nintendo to an Amiga. Unfortunately, the box they gave me was empty, so I had no power cable or interface cable. So let's take a look at what condition it was in. The sticker says $50, but it was actually half off because it was the last day of the sale. The condition doesn't look too bad on camera here, but the thing was disgusting and the keys were yellowed. On the back, it has MIDI ports and a special one called the Miracle port. This is where it would connect to your game consoles and stuff. I noticed it used 12 volts AC, so my Nintendo power supply would work with it. I also picked up this Casio SA9 for $2 at the same location. It's in pretty rotten condition too, but I'll deal with this one later. So I decided to go ahead and clean this thing up, starting with disassembly. Apparently there were 2 ribbon cables that had to be unplugged before I could go any further. I didn't really need to get to the logic board for cleaning, but I couldn't resist seeing what was on the other side, so I unscrewed it. This just appears to be an RF shield, and all of the good stuff is on the other side. So, looking over it, I could identify a few chips. This is an 8 kilobyte SRAM chip, a surprising amount of RAM for a keyboard this basic. This is an EEPROM, which likely has the operating system and instrument sample data. This is an Intel 8032 embedded CPU. These are all custom chips that have the Software Toolworks logo on them. One of them is probably a synthesizer chip. I couldn't find anything on this ST microelectronics chip, but my guess is it's for input and output. The logic board was actually pretty dirty too. I used some compressed air to get the dirt off, but in some places it looked like it had corrosion from liquid exposure. I cleaned up most of it with a dry toothbrush. It took some scrubbing, but it was easier than going the liquid cleaning route, which would have involved many extra steps. Once I got the keyboard mechanism out, I just used water to clean the inside of the case. I've never encountered a key mechanism quite like this one. Once I started getting the keys off, it was clear just how dirty it was under there. I used some compressed air to clean off the main part, and then I took the keys to the sink and cleaned them off with water and a little scrubbing. The keys cleaned up pretty well, except for 2 issues. One issue was these apparent scratches, but I've often found alcohol can remove stuff like this, and sure enough, the stuff came right off. The next problem is that these keys are yellowed from age and UV exposure. So I stuck all of the keys in a Ziploc bag and filled it with hydrogen peroxide, and then I set them out in the sun for the better part of a day, going out to rotate it and mix it up about once an hour. In the meantime, I could reattach the black keys since they don't need any further treatment. You can already see this thing looks a million times better. Once the white keys were done being treated, I began to reattach them. Of course, these keys aren't all the same, so it's sort of like putting a puzzle together. Whoops, that one doesn't go there. Ah, there we go, much better. Once they were all in the correct places, I reattached the little springs, and here's the finished keyboard mechanism. It looks much better, doesn't it? So then it was time to snap the key mech back into place, and here's the finished product. I can actually play this now without cringing. So let me give you a quick demonstration. Now, normally I would not show every single instrument on a keyboard review, but being this thing literally only has 6 instruments, I guess I'll show them all to you. I'll start with the piano. It doesn't sound too bad, it's sampled of course. I think the harpsichord sounds more like an electric guitar. Here's the organ. I like the sound of the vibraphone. Here's the electric piano. And finally, the synthesizer. So, what do I like about it? Well, it is simple to operate. I like that. It also has velocity-sensitive keys, which allows for more expression. I like that it has MIDI and line-out ports for recording. What I don't like about it is the build quality. It's made entirely of plastic. Now, plastic is fine for a keyboard like this, but most larger keyboards use a metal frame for the keyboard mechanism, and so because this thing is all plastic, it creaks and cracks a lot when playing it. Take a listen to what it sounds like in person with the keyboard turned off to see what I mean. And of course, I'm not fond of having only 6 instruments. Even early 1980s keyboards had at least 8. This thing came out in 1991, and by that point, most keyboards had hundreds. So I hate to say it, but overall, from a hardware perspective, as a standalone instrument, this thing's actually a piece of junk. Especially considering that it cost like $500 back in 1991. But this thing was marketed as a learning tool and its ability to connect to game consoles. I remember seeing it in computer stores, electronic stores, and even toy stores back in the 1990s. So as far as how I rate that particular aspect of the keyboard, well, I'll have to wait until I get the appropriate cable set up to connect it to my Nintendo, and then I'll let you know on that in a future episode. Even if it does turn out to be good for learning, I think Software Toolworks would have been better off contracting with someone like Casio or Yamaha to include a rebranded version of one of their amateur keyboards. Just my opinion, of course.